Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
There are moments in life that etch themselves into your bones. They don't just pass by like wind, they stay live inside you. That recital night? It carved itself into me with surgical precision. I was seated in the third row, dead center, right where Mira could see me if she glanced up, though she rarely did when she was focused. She was wearing the pale blue dress we'd picked out together. It had tiny embroidered birds along the waistline and a ribbon that shimmered when she walked. 12 years old, sitting in front of a polished grand piano, surrounded by hundreds of velvet seats and murmured expectations. Mira was playing Debussy's Clair de Lune, and for the first 2 minutes, she was a vision, every note liquid, every pause intentional. The room held its breath with her. And then, everything changed. It was subtle at first. A hiccup in her timing. A small shake in her left hand. My chest tightened, but I told myself it was just nerves. Even Mira, as brilliant as she was, had the right to be human. But then she froze. Her fingers hovered above the keys, unmoving. Her head tilted ever so slightly. I saw her mouth open, just a little, like she was trying to breathe through something stuck in her throat. And then, without a sound, Mira collapsed sideways onto the keys. The discordant noise that followed rang like an alarm bell through the hall. Gasps echoed. Chairs scraped. I was already on my feet, leaping over someone's leg, knocking over a program in the aisle. I got to her before anyone else. My arms cradled her tiny frame as her body went limp in mine. Behind me, I heard a voice, calm, too calm, say, "It's probably just nerves." I turned. Rochelle hadn't even stood up. She was sitting there in her black cocktail dress, arms crossed like this was some kind of overreaction. She didn't even look scared. Not confused. Just inconvenienced. "It's not nerves," I said, though I barely recognized my own voice. Myra's breathing was shallow. Her eyelids fluttered. I carried her out of the hall like a man possessed, pushing past ushers, ignoring the stunned audience. The car ride to the hospital felt like a bad dream stitched together by red lights and blind panic. Rochelle rode in the back seat, staring at her phone, not even trying to hold Myra's hand. In the ER, they got Mira on oxygen. Monitors beeped. I stood by helplessly, fists clenched, replaying the moment in my mind like a broken film reel. The doctor came in after an hour. "She's stable now. But we need to ask, did she take her medication today?" "Of course," I said instantly. "She never misses it. We even packed the pill case in her bag, just like always." The doctor frowned. "That's strange. Her blood work doesn't show any trace of it. At all." I didn't say anything at first. I just stared. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the security app tied to her bag. It had a small tracker built in, a safety measure I installed after the diagnosis. Myra's medication had to be taken at the same time every day. No room for forgetfulness. No margin for error. I drove back to the recital hall, leaving Rochelle in the hospital with Mira. I unlocked Myra's duffel bag from the car, opened the pill case. My heart dropped. There were pills inside. Yes, but they weren't hers. They weren't coded, labeled, or sealed. They weren't even real medication. They were sugar, compressed white sugar pellets. I stared at them like they might vanish if I blinked. But they didn't. They sat there, quiet, damning, and deadly in their own way. My daughter collapsed in front of a room full of strangers because someone replaced her medication with candy. And someone new. I returned to the hospital in a daze. The moment I walked in, I saw Rochelle in the hallway, laughing quietly with her sister, Taryn. When she saw me, she raised an eyebrow. "Did you find her pills?" I didn't speak. I just handed the open case to her. She looked down, blinked. "What is this? You tell me." Taryn peered over her shoulder. Her expression barely flickered. "Maybe she mixed them up. She's been under a lot of pressure. These aren't medication, Taryn." "Okay. Well, maybe a little humility is good for her." That was the moment. The exact second something broke inside me. I felt it, like glass cracking slowly beneath weight. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth hurt. I didn't yell, didn't throw anything. I just looked at her, and in my silence, everything inside me began to rearrange. Because this wasn't a prank. This wasn't a harmless mistake. This was intentional. A child, my child, was humiliated and nearly harmed because someone in our own family thought she was too full of herself. They'd whispered it before, that Mira needed to be less perfect, that she was spoiled because she practiced 3 hours a day and took pride in her talent, that maybe it was unfair how much attention she got at recitals. Now I realized it wasn't just whispers. They meant it. And worse, they acted on it. Myra's life had been put at risk, and no one said sorry. I stood in that hallway, holding the useless pill case. Watching the two of them act like this was just another awkward moment to gloss over. Rochelle didn't apologize. Taryn didn't flinch. And me? I didn't say a word. Not yet. But something started forming in my mind. A quiet plan. A sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. Because they had just shown me who they were. And I was about to show them who I could be. We stayed the night at the hospital. Mira slept most of the time, drifting in and out, her little hands occasionally twitching in her sleep as if still playing those broken piano notes in her dreams. The doctor said she'd make a full recovery, this time. He looked at me carefully as he said it, emphasizing the words, as if he knew exactly what this time meant, as if he was telling me that next time, we might not be so lucky. I sat by her bed the whole night. I didn't close my eyes. I couldn't. Every time I tried, I saw her collapsing again, saw the way her fingers had frozen mid-note, the way her breath had caught like she was choking on air. Every second replayed on loop, until my body was stiff and my mind was wired like a taut wire ready to snap. Rochelle came in around 7 in the morning, holding a cup of coffee like this was just another inconvenient morning. She took one look at me and rolled her eyes. "You should go home and get some rest," she said. "You look terrible." I didn't answer her. I didn't even look at her. I just turned back to Mira and brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. She was warm again. Her breathing was even. The machines beeped in a steady rhythm that gave me something, anything, to anchor to. "She's going to be fine," Rochelle said flatly, like that excused everything. It was probably a mistake. Maybe someone grabbed the wrong pills. "Someone did grab the wrong pills," I said without turning around. "On purpose." That silenced her for a moment. Then I heard her scoff behind me. "You're not seriously blaming Taryn." "She said it herself," I replied. "You heard her. Maybe a little humility is good for her? Who says that after a child collapses on stage?" "She was just being defensive," Rochelle replied with that same exhausting dismissiveness I'd come to know so well. "You were accusing her of something pretty serious." "I wasn't accusing," I said, finally turning around. "I was stating what I found. And let's not pretend Taryn hasn't had it out for Mira since the day she won that school competition last fall." Rochelle's face hardened. "So now you're saying my sister is some kind of monster?" "I'm saying your sister is cruel," I said calmly. "And she's surrounded by people who excuse her every move, including you." That stung. She flinched, barely, but she flinched. Then, like clockwork, she recovered, crossed her arms, and tilted her head. "Myra's been a little full of herself lately," she said. "Don't you think? She's 12. Maybe all the praise has gone to her head." My mouth went dry. "You think that justifies what happened?" "I think people don't always handle being ignored in their own family," she said coolly. "Taryn's been preparing for her wedding. Everyone's been talking about Mira instead." That's when the switch flipped. The final click in the lock. This wasn't about a mistake. This wasn't about a single act of pettiness. This was a pattern. This was years of quiet resentment that finally boiled over, and Mira paid the price for it. And now her mother was standing in front of me, defending the one who nearly hurt her, all because she couldn't stomach her sister being seen as anything other than perfect. I stood up. "I'm not doing this." "Doing what?" "Pretending this is normal. Pretending Myra's collapse was just a blip. Pretending your family didn't just commit something I could report to the police if I wanted to." Her face paled for the first time. She blinked, genuinely surprised. I rarely raised my voice, and I hadn't yet. But the shift in my tone, controlled, firm, cut through her like cold wind. "I'm going to fix this," I continued. "Not for you. Not even for myself. For Mira. Because the people who were supposed to protect her chose to punish her instead." "Protect her from what?" "From being extraordinary," I said. "You've all spent so long trying to make her small so Taryn could feel big. It ends today." She tried to speak, but I was already turning to walk away. I needed air. I needed distance. I needed a voice of reason that didn't have the same last name as the ones trying to destroy mine and Myra's peace. So I called Gavin. He picked up on the second ring, groggy but alert. "Hey, man, everything okay?" "No," I said. "But you're the first person I've talked to who actually cares about that answer." "What happened?" I told him everything. From the pills to the recital to Rochelle's response. Gavin didn't interrupt once. When I finished, there was a pause on the line. "You want to take legal action?" "No," I said. "I want something better. I want her to feel what it's like when the ground gets pulled from under her. I want this to stay clean, quiet, sharp, like a scalpel. That I can do, he said. I explained what I remembered from years ago, the family legacy trust. How Rochelle's grandfather had made me co-trustee after I married in. Back then, it was just paperwork. They wanted a family member with a clean record and financial experience to help oversee things. And I did, barely. I stayed out of it. Signed only what I was told. Never interfered. But now? Now I needed to. Check if there's a clause about beneficiaries who harm minors, I said. He was already typing. Yup, he said after a beat. Right here. Section 3C. Any act of willful harm, neglect, or endangerment toward a minor, direct or indirect, by a beneficiary or their agent may result in immediate forfeiture of fund access, pending review. That's strong. She switched the pills. I've got the case. I've got the video footage. I've got her voice. Then we've got everything we need. I closed my eyes. For the first time since Mira collapsed, I felt steady again. This wasn't going to be a loud battle. There wouldn't be shouting. No fighting in the driveway. No cops. Just facts. Paper. Signatures. Digital locks. Quiet moves that hit like thunder when they landed. I returned to Myra's room. She was awake now, blinking sleepily. Hey, I said softly, kneeling beside her. How are you feeling? She smiled faintly. Tired. My chest hurts a little. You scared me. Sorry, Dad. Never say sorry for being amazing, I whispered, kissing her knuckles. You didn't do anything wrong. I held her hand until she fell asleep again. And as she slept, I sat there in silence, watching the monitors and thinking about the people who should have been sitting where I was. The ones who should have been weeping, praying, holding her. They weren't. They were too busy protecting each other. Well, now it was my turn. To protect her. And to make sure every single person who tried to break her spirit felt the weight of what they did. One signature at a time. Taryn's wedding had been the centerpiece of every conversation in Rochelle's family for nearly a year. Every brunch, every dinner, every awkward holiday gathering circled back to it. From the dress fittings to the 10-tier cake flown in from New York, they talked about that wedding like it was a royal coronation. And Taryn? She acted like a queen already crowned. I had smiled through most of it. Stayed quiet. Signed a few checks Rochelle passed across the kitchen table. I'd assumed the money was coming from the family trust. They insisted I didn't need to get involved in the details. I didn't ask questions. But after what happened to Mira, silence no longer suited me. I sat down at my desk that Monday morning, logged into the secure trust portal I hadn't touched in years, and for the first time in a long time, I paid attention. The password still worked. My name still sat beside Taryn's in the co-trustees section. It took just a few clicks to access the financial records. The numbers that popped up on the screen didn't surprise me. They sickened me. $130,000. Gone. All for a wedding that hadn't happened yet. It was all there in black and white. Venue payments. Travel deposits. High-end floral orders. Photography packages that included drone footage, cinematography, and a private rehearsal weekend at a vineyard. It was extravagance on paper. But beneath the numbers, I saw something else. Recklessness. Privilege. A sense of entitlement that ran so deep. None of them even bothered to check the terms of the trust. But I did. Section 4. Clause G. Intentional harm to a minor disqualifies a beneficiary from accessing funds permanently. I printed it out, highlighted it, then picked up the phone and called Gavin. She violated the clause, I said. I want to proceed. You're aware of the implications? Yes. If you freeze the trust now, everything she's scheduled will fall apart in days. I'm counting on it. He paused for a second. You're not just doing this to get back at her, are you? No, I replied. I'm doing it so she never gets the chance to do this again to anyone else. He didn't argue. I stared at the photo of Mira on my desk, her at 8 years old, seated on a little wooden stool with her fingers curled gently over the keyboard. Her eyes had been full of light then. Pure joy. She didn't play to compete. She played because music made her feel safe. Powerful. And now, someone in our own family had decided to crush that spark with sugar pills. I clicked the freeze option on the trust account. The system asked me twice if I was sure. I clicked yes both times. It took less than a minute, but the consequences would echo for much longer. By noon the next day, the calls started coming in. I was walking back to my car after lunch when Rochelle called. Did you touch the trust? I did. You froze it. Yes. Are you out of your mind? The wedding is in 5 weeks. Not anymore. I could hear her pacing on the other end. The way her breath hitched told me the fallout had already started. Good. Taryn's planner just called her in tears, she said. The venue canceled. They're not refunding the deposit because the payment failed. The floral designer backed out. Everything's falling apart. Sounds about right. You're punishing her over one stupid mistake? I stopped walking, stared at the sky. It was cloudless and calm. She drugged our daughter, Rochelle. It wasn't drugs. She replaced her medication. I cut in. That could have killed her. Don't minimize it. She wasn't trying to kill her. She didn't care if she did. That's just as bad. There was silence. Then she tried again. You could have at least talked to me first. I did, I said. You chose to defend her. You said Mira was full of herself. You stood there and justified what your sister did instead of standing up for your daughter. This isn't just about Mira, she snapped. You're tearing apart our entire family over this. No, Rochelle, I said quietly. Your family tore itself apart. I'm just not letting them do it quietly. I hung up. I knew the rest would follow. Elaine called that evening. I let it ring twice before answering. You vindictive little man, she hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done to this family? I protected my child. You're overreacting. She collapsed on stage. I found sugar pills in her case. And your daughter smirked and called it humility. That's not overreacting. That's parenting. Elaine actually laughed. Cold. Sharp. She's just a kid. She needs to learn her place. She did, I replied. She learned it's not beneath your feet anymore. And then I hung up again. The thing about people like Elaine and Rochelle and Taryn is they're so used to getting away with things, they forget consequences exist. They rewrite narratives in their heads, turn cruelty into tough love, betrayal into banter. They smile through destruction because they've never had to clean up the debris. But not this time. Not on my watch. By the third day, Taryn's wedding website was down. The dressmaker pulled out. The DJ sent a refund notice, minus the non-refundable deposit, of course. The bridal shower was canceled. Vendors began reaching out to other clients, desperate to recoup losses. Taryn tried calling me. I didn't pick up. Rochelle sent texts. I didn't answer. Because what could they say? What apology could possibly account for the fact that they watched a 12-year-old girl collapse and responded with shrugs and smirks? The silence wasn't revenge. It was clarity. They'd lived too long in a world without consequences. I was just giving them a taste of what real accountability looked like. And I was only getting started. There's a specific sound silence makes when it follows chaos. Not the soft kind. No, this kind of silence is heavy. Like a vacuum left behind when a bomb goes off. That's what our house felt like after I froze the trust. Rochelle didn't speak to me for 2 days. Taryn went dark online. Elaine fired off a string of half-rage, half-manipulative texts, but I blocked her number after the third one ended with, "You'll regret this when your daughter grows up and hates you too." They were unraveling faster than I expected. And I wasn't finished. It didn't take long for the financial ruin to snowball. With the trust frozen, Taryn's upcoming payment installments to her venue, floral designer, and planner all bounced back one after the other. Some of those vendors had already extended beyond their cancellation windows. That meant no refunds. And when I say no refunds, I mean tens of thousands of dollars that simply vanished. She poured money into appearances, lavish linens, imported orchids, gold-trimmed invitations, a horse-drawn carriage. All gone. Wasted. The kind of loss that not only humiliated her, but also exposed the one thing people like her feared the most, that they weren't actually as powerful as they pretended to be. By the end of the week, the wedding was officially postponed indefinitely. But we all knew the truth. It was dead. Buried. Without even a rehearsal. The first person to break the silence was Rochelle. I had just come back from dropping Mira off at her music therapist when she was waiting for me in the kitchen, arms crossed, jaw tight, phone in hand. She didn't waste time. Are you happy now? I walked past her, placing my keys on the counter, then grabbed a glass of water. Calmness is something you learn, especially when you've spent years biting your tongue in a family where truth was considered rudeness. You froze her out, she snapped. You destroyed everything she worked for. No, I said simply. She destroyed it. I slammed the glass down harder than I meant to. It cracked at the rim, a small fracture, but loud enough to stop her mid-sentence. She didn't care if she did, I said, more quietly now, each word deliberate. That's the point. And the fact that you're still defending her tells me everything I need to know. Rochelle looked away, like the floor suddenly became fascinating. You really want to burn everything down? She asked softly. Your marriage? Your in-laws? Your daughter's sense of family? I almost laughed at the irony of it. My daughter collapsed on stage in front of a crowd. She could have had a seizure. She could have died. And the first thing your sister said was that it might humble her a little. And you? You said it was probably just nerves. Mira doesn't need that kind of family. She needs protection. She needs a father who doesn't flinch when people in his life do evil things and expect him to stay polite about it. She's 12, not dying. She's 12, and you let her down. The silence that followed wasn't comfortable. Rochelle's face tightened in that defensive way she always did when she was losing control of a conversation but refused to admit it. Her lips twitched like she wanted to say something cruel but knew she wouldn't come back from it. She left the house later that evening without a word. I didn't ask where she was going. I didn't care. I opened my laptop and revisited the trust account again, confirming everything was locked and secure. Then I drafted a document for Gavin, full documentation of all disbursements, clause violations, and intent to escalate. The next phase wasn't just about freezing the funds. It was about permanent removal, legal disinheritance. And once it started, there was no reversing it. The next morning, the first of many calls came in. Not to me, but to them. The wedding planner posted a not-so-subtle statement on social media. Always read the fine print. Always choose clients with integrity. We're heartbroken to no longer be part of what was supposed to be a beautiful event. Subtle shade, but intentional. The venue followed with a similar post, clarifying that non-compliance with contractual funding obligations had led to the cancellation. It didn't name names, but everyone in Rochelle's family circle knew who it was about. Gossip moved fast when it had something juicy to chew on. Elaine left 3 voicemails, escalating from, "We need to talk," to "You're destroying this family" over a tantrum. I didn't respond. I forwarded them all to Gavin for documentation. Then, late that night, my phone buzzed again. "Rochelle." I answered this time. "You're really not going to stop, are you?" she asked. Her voice was quieter now. Exhausted. "No," I said. "Because no one protected Mira except me. And I'm not going to stop now. I miss my sister. She nearly killed your child. She didn't mean to. That doesn't change what she did." There was a pause. Then she said something that made my chest go hollow. "I think I'm going to stay at Taryn's for a few days." I swallowed the surge of disbelief. "You're choosing her over us." "I'm not choosing sides." "You already did." She didn't answer. Just hung up. And I stood there, staring at my phone, heart thudding slowly, not from sadness, but from the strange, icy peace that comes when someone finally shows you who they are without filter or pretense. Humiliation, it turns out, has a price tag. Sometimes that price is a wedding. Sometimes it's a family. Sometimes it's a lie that can't be swept under a silk rug anymore. But whatever the cost, they were going to pay it. Every single one of them. Truth is a funny thing. People think they can talk their way around it, pretty it up, paint it over. But the thing about truth? It doesn't need to shout. It just waits. It doesn't argue or plead. It just sits there, waiting for someone to press play. And that's exactly what I intended to do. After the fallout started and Rochelle moved in with her sister, I barely heard from either of them. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was calculating. I knew them well enough to know that when they stopped talking, they were planning. They probably thought they still had a chance to spin the narrative, to gather their friends and whisper half-truths like they always did. Maybe they assumed Mira would get better and I'd eventually calm down. What they didn't know, what they never expected, was that I had proof. The recital hall had cameras backstage. Not just for security, but to record student entrances and exits for the parents who paid extra for footage packages. I called the director, explained what happened, and asked if I could access the file. She was hesitant at first, understandably, but when I said it involved potential evidence of harm to a child, her voice changed. I gave her the exact time window. Less than an hour later, she sent over the raw footage. I opened the file alone in the quiet of my study. Mira was already asleep, and I didn't want her anywhere near what I was about to watch. The camera wasn't high quality, but it didn't need to be. I watched Taryn walk into the waiting room area, phone in one hand, handbag in the other. She looked bored. She wasn't even supposed to be back there, only staff and performers. But there she was, pacing behind the curtain like she had every right to be. Then she spotted Myra's bag. I watched her glance around, casually, like someone checking for traffic before jaywalking. Then she walked over, crouched, and unzipped the side pouch. My jaw clenched. She pulled out the pill case, looked at it, opened it. Then she reached into her purse, and I saw it clear as day. A different bottle, small, unlabeled. She opened Myra's case, dumped the real pills in her palm, looked at them for a second, then dropped them into her purse. She replaced them with the sugar tablets. Then came the part that made my blood go cold. She whispered something to herself. The footage had audio, faint but audible. Let's see if this little princess can still play prodigy without her crutches. She zipped the bag and walked off like she'd just straightened a piece of furniture. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I sat there long after the video ended, staring at the screen like I was waiting for it to change. It didn't, because the truth doesn't need edits. It just needs to be seen. I copied the footage to a thumb drive and put it in an envelope. No note, no threats, no drama. Just the video, addressed to Jonas, Taryn's fiancé. I'd met Jonas a few times. Nice enough guy. A little naive. The kind of man who smiled through family chaos because he didn't want to get in the middle of it. I couldn't blame him. But now he needed to know who he was planning to build a life with. I dropped the envelope in his mailbox myself. Then I went home, made dinner, and waited. I didn't hear anything that night, or the next morning. But the following afternoon, just as I was coming back from Myra's appointment, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Jonas, I saw the video. I don't even know what to say. Thank you for telling me the truth. I've ended the engagement. I sat down at the kitchen table. Let the words sink in. The wedding was officially over. But the silence didn't last long. That evening, as I was taking out the trash, I heard tires screech against the curb. Taryn's SUV. She jumped out before the car even stopped moving. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes wild. She stormed up the driveway like a storm in heels. You sick, pathetic man, she screamed. I didn't respond. Just stood there, bag in hand, waiting for her to finish. You ruined my life. You had no right. You messed with my daughter's medication. It was sugar. She's fine. She collapsed on stage. It was just a wake-up call. I dropped the trash bag into the bin, calmly shut the lid, and faced her. You think because you didn't put her in a hospital bed with a needle in her arm that you didn't do anything wrong. But let me tell you something, Taryn. You'll never stand in front of a man like me and expect to walk away clean. You destroyed my engagement. No, I said quietly. You did that the moment you decided your pride was more important than a child's health. I just made sure your fiancé saw who you really are. She was crying now, but it wasn't the kind of crying that comes from guilt. It was rage, embarrassment, the pain of someone who finally had to live in a world where her actions meant something. You think this makes you a hero? She spat. You think Mira will love you more for this? I don't need her to love me more, I said. I need her to know that someone in this family put her first. For once. Taryn didn't have a response for that. She turned and marched back to her car, slammed the door, and peeled off without another word. I watched her taillights disappear, then walked back inside and closed the door behind me. For the first time in days, I exhaled. Later that night, as Mira brushed her teeth, she poked her head out of the bathroom. Dad, yeah. Was I really full of myself? Like they said. My chest cracked wide open. I knelt beside her, drying my hands. You're confident. That's not a bad thing. That's what people who aren't confident say to make themselves feel better. Do you wish I didn't play piano so much? I shook my head. I wish I could listen to you play every day for the rest of my life. She smiled, wiped her mouth, and hugged me tight. Her little arms wrapped around my neck, warm and sure. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't about revenge. This was about reclaiming the truth and showing her what protection looked like when everyone else failed. Some people think when the truth finally comes out, things get quiet, like everything settles and makes sense. But in my experience, the truth doesn't calm things down. It cracks things open. And when a family is built on secrets and control, like Rochelle's, the truth doesn't just break the surface. It detonates everything. The morning after Jonas called off the wedding, the fallout began. Not slowly, not gradually, but like a dam bursting. Elaine called my phone 4 times before 9 a.m. I let them all go to voicemail. The first message was indignant, the second defensive, the third pleading, and the fourth full of thinly veiled threats. Typical progression. I forwarded them all to Gavin, who by now had a full folder dedicated to communications from the circus, as he called it. Rochelle came home 2 days later. Not to stay, just to grab a few things. At least that's what she told me. She walked into the house with sunglasses still on, like she was shielding herself from something brighter than sunlight. Jonas's mother is threatening to sue Taryn for emotional damages, she said immediately, like it was my fault. She should, I replied. She's not going to win. She might. The footage speaks for itself. Rochelle dropped her bag onto the counter harder than necessary. You've turned this whole family into a war zone. No, I said evenly. Your family turned it into a war zone the day they decided a child's well-being was a fair price for pride. I'm just making sure no one gets to pretend they didn't start it. She stared at me like she didn't recognize the man standing in front of her. Maybe she didn't. I used to let things slide. Stay out of their drama. Smile at dinners. Nod through insults dressed as jokes. But that man, he died the night Mira collapsed. I can't even show my face at work, she muttered. You mean your coworkers heard about what Taryn did and you're embarrassed to be connected to it? I'm embarrassed because you made it public. No, I said again. Taryn made it public when she did something cruel and got caught. I made sure it wasn't buried like everything else in your family. Her voice trembled then, not from sadness, but from frustration. You've gone too far. I haven't gone far enough. She went quiet. I thought maybe she would try to say something different, something that even vaguely resembled accountability. But instead, she muttered, I'm staying at Taryn's for another week. That was all I needed to hear. You do that, I said calmly. But by the time you come back, you might not be walking into the same home. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't curse. I didn't slam the door. I just looked her in the eyes and told the truth. And the truth hit her harder than any argument ever could. That afternoon, Gavin sent over the paperwork to formally remove Taryn as a beneficiary of the trust. The footage, the hospital records, the canceled wedding all submitted as exhibits. The clause was ironclad. She had violated it. There was no gray area. And because Rochelle had openly defended her, encouraged her actions, and refused to participate in corrective action, Gavin recommended she be considered for removal as well. It's bold, he said, but it'll send a message. Send it. The notice was served the next day. Elaine received hers in person. According to Gavin's assistant, she screamed so loudly at the courier, he had to walk back to his car sideways. Rochelle got her copy at Taryn's front door. I saw the photo Gavin's process server took, standard procedure. Her expression? Not shock. Not sorrow. Just a look that said, this isn't supposed to happen to us. But it was. Jonas texted me again that night. He thanked me once more. Said he was moving on with his life, and that he'd told his parents everything. You didn't just save Mira, he said. You saved me from marrying into that madness. I stared at the message longer than I should have. Because part of me was still in disbelief at how far they'd gone, how blind they were, how quickly loyalty became a tool for guilt. Elaine posted a message on Facebook the following morning, dripping with self-pity, hinting at certain people tearing apart what we've built out of jealousy and resentment. She didn't name names, but the comments filled in the blanks. Some defended her. Some asked uncomfortable questions. One even tagged me and asked, "Is this about Mira?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because I wasn't playing the social media game. I was playing for permanence. By the weekend, the trust administrators issued a formal update. As of this notice, Taryn Miller and Rochelle Miller are no longer listed as eligible beneficiaries due to a breach of contractual integrity and harm clause violation. It was over. Official. Documented. Irreversible. But that didn't stop Elaine from showing up at my house the next evening. I was in the garage, organizing boxes for donation, when I heard the knock. I opened the door, and there she was. Pearl necklace, pristine blouse, but her face was pinched and her tone brittle. You had no right. I had every right. Co-trustee. Evidence. Legal counsel. You signed off on the rules when the trust was created, Elaine. You think this is justice? No, I said. This is just consequence. Justice would have come years ago, when Mira first started getting side-eyed by you and your daughters for being talented and unbothered. She stepped forward, lowering her voice. She's 12, and you're punishing grown women like it's a mafia movie. I tilted my head. She's 12, and those grown women humiliated her, endangered her, and then called it character building. Forgive me if I'm not feeling particularly charitable. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. There was nothing left for her to say. So she turned, walked back to her car, and drove off. I watched her go without blinking. And that night, as I tucked Mira into bed and kissed her forehead, I whispered something into the quiet. They can melt down. They can scream. They can run their mouths from rooftops. But we don't need to raise our voices. We just have to stand tall. Because real protection isn't loud. It's relentless. I knew they wouldn't go quietly. People like Taryn don't vanish when the lights go out. They throw another party and pray someone shows up with a flashlight. That's how the replacement celebration was born. I heard about it through one of Rochelle's cousins, Lena, who still spoke to me in secret. She sent me a screenshot of the invitation. Gold cursive, champagne bubbles, a tagline that read, "A night of joy, rebirth, and unforgettable surprises." It was hosted at a friend's luxury estate. Semi-formal. Donations encouraged. Guests were told to expect a reveal that will change everything. I nearly laughed when I read it. Taryn was spinning her downfall into a comeback tour. A woman who'd sabotaged a child's medication, destroyed her own wedding, and been disinherited from a trust fund was now calling herself a phoenix rising from the ashes. All she needed was a new stage. That was fine. I had a stage too. And this time, I was going to take the mic. I called Gavin and told him I wanted to attend. Not as a guest. As a witness. As a message. "You sure?" he asked. "I'm not going to shout or start a scene," I said. "I'm going to tell the truth. One time. In front of everyone who's been lied to." He didn't try to talk me out of it. Jonas agreed to come with me. Said he had some things of his own to say. I could hear it in his voice. This wasn't about revenge for him anymore. This was about release. Closure. Maybe even warning others. The rot in that family didn't just live in whispers, it festered in public image. We dressed well. Suits. Calm colors. I wore the watch Mira gave me for my birthday last year. She didn't know I still wore it every day. Before I left, she handed me a small flash drive. "Just in case," she said, her eyes steady. Some people only believe what they can see. She had no idea how proud I was of her. The estate was as over the top as I expected. Winding driveway. White tint glowing under fairy lights. Waiters in tuxedos offering glasses of sparkling wine. Music played softly in the background, the kind designed to keep people comfortable and distracted. Inside the tent, the crowd was already gathering. Maybe 70 or 80 people. Family. Friends. Acquaintances hoping to catch a scandal and pretend they were there for support. I spotted Elaine first, standing near the bar like she hadn't been part of the trust's collapse. Her eyes landed on me and narrowed instantly. "Taryn's not going to let you speak," she muttered when I passed. I didn't reply. I just smiled, because it wasn't her call anymore. The crowd quieted when Taryn emerged. Her dress was gold, shiny, sequined, like a walking trophy. Her hair was styled, her makeup flawless, her posture practiced. She took the mic from the DJ with both hands and beamed at the audience. "Thank you all for coming," she said sweetly. "This has been a difficult season. But tonight isn't about pain. It's about power. It's about reclaiming joy. It's about growth." There were polite claps. I glanced at Gavin, who was standing just behind me, briefcase in hand. Jonas nodded. And Taryn continued, her voice rising. "It's about the people who stood by me. Through betrayal, through heartbreak, through twisted lies." "Speaking of betrayal," I said, stepping forward, "may I say a few words?" Gasps rippled through the tent. Taryn froze. Her smile faltered just enough to crack. Elaine stepped forward. "This isn't your." "It won't take long," I said, louder now, so everyone could hear. "And I think the guests deserve to hear the full story before they donate to a woman who endangered a child." Taryn tried to stop me. "This is private." It became public the moment Mira collapsed. I turned to the crowd. "My name is Aaron. Many of you know me as Rochelle's husband. Myra's father. A man who's usually quiet. Too quiet. But that quietness cost my daughter her safety. And I won." It shows Taryn opening my daughter's bag, removing her life-saving medication, replacing it with sugar, and then saying on tape, "Let's see if this little princess can still play prodigy without her crutches." A stunned silence. "You don't have to believe me. You can watch it yourself." I handed the drive to the event technician. The man hesitated, then plugged it into the laptop. I could see his hands trembling. The video played. Taryn's figure appeared on screen. Clear enough. Her voice, sharp. Her movements, undeniable. Nobody said a word. When it ended, I turned back to the room. She didn't just ruin her own wedding. She nearly ruined a child's life. And every person who stood by her, every person who excused it, minimized it, twisted it, helped her get there. I looked directly at Elaine. "You raised daughters who learned to harm and hide." Then to Taryn. "You wore this dress for a celebration. But what are you celebrating exactly? Survival? No. You're celebrating the fact that for years, nobody held you accountable. Jonas stepped forward. I canceled our wedding because I saw who she really is. But I stayed silent after. And that was my mistake. I won't stay silent now. He faced the guests. I was supposed to marry her. And if not for Aaron, I would have. So if you're here tonight thinking about who to believe, ask yourself what she would have done if she'd gotten away with it. The room was quiet. Tense. Taryn started crying. You're humiliating me. I didn't raise my voice. You humiliated yourself the moment you thought a child's illness was your playground. She stepped toward me and, without warning, slapped me across the face. The sound echoed through the tent. I didn't move. I didn't touch my cheek. I just looked her in the eyes and said, you were supposed to protect her with me. You chose your ego instead. Now live with it. Then I walked out. Gavin followed. Jonas too. Outside, the air was cold and clean. For the first time in weeks, I breathed deeply. Not because I'd spoken, but because I'd finally been heard. Some consequences don't come like storms. They don't crash down all at once, flooding everything in sight. Some come like slow tides, washing away the lies piece by piece until all that's left is truth. There, uncomfortable, permanent. After the footage played at Taryn's party and she slapped me in front of a room full of guests, the silence that followed wasn't just awkward, it was heavy. The kind of silence that says, this can't be taken back. I didn't go home and celebrate. I didn't pour a drink or write a speech. I just took a long walk around the neighborhood while Mira slept soundly upstairs. Every step reminded me of why I'd done what I'd done. Not for applause. Not for revenge. But to make sure people like Taryn didn't keep getting away with this. To make sure Mira never had to wonder if her father stayed silent when she needed him loud. The next morning, Gavin sent me an email. Just one line and a PDF. Subject: finalized. Message: they're out. It's done. I opened the attachment. A legal document, plain, emotionless, but powerful. Taryn Miller and Rochelle Miller, permanently removed as beneficiaries of the C. Halworth Family Legacy Trust. Additional line: Elaine Miller under review for fiduciary abuse and potential misappropriation of funds. They weren't just frozen anymore. They were erased. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling for a long time. People like Elaine had lived their whole lives believing rules were suggestions and consequences were for people with less influence. But this time, there were no back doors. No whispered apologies. Just legal weight. Just silence. Later that day, Gavin called. By the way, he said, what do you want to do with the funds? What do you mean? Well, with Rochelle and Taryn out, you and the remaining trustee have sole authority. You could reallocate, redirect, even repurpose the entire remainder. I blinked. How much are we talking? Roughly $780,000 left in the account. I whistled under my breath. Any recommendations? I asked. He paused, then said, you ever think about setting something up in Myra's name? And just like that, the idea was born. It took about a week to finalize, but Gavin worked fast. We redirected the trust into a new fund, the Arden Grant, named after Myra's middle name. A music scholarship for young girls with chronic medical conditions, those who, like Mira, needed something beautiful to hold onto in a world that sometimes made their bodies the enemy. We built a panel of doctors, musicians, and child advocates. Mira didn't know it yet, but I was planning to tell her soon. The day I signed the final papers, Rochelle came home. I was in the living room, reviewing paperwork, when the front door opened and she stepped inside like nothing had happened. She looked tired. Not in a physical way, something deeper. Like she'd spent the last few weeks watching everything she thought was untouchable fall apart in slow motion. I just need to talk, she said. I didn't stop her. She sat down across from me, folded her hands in her lap, looked at me like she was searching for an earlier version of me, the man who used to forgive everything. But that man didn't live here anymore. I've been thinking, she began, about Mira, about all of this. You should have done that sooner. I know. Silence. I let my family control too much, she said. Finally, I let Taryn get away with things I never should have. I let my mother convince me that Mira was being spoiled, not strong. And when she collapsed, I just froze. I didn't know how to react. I studied her. Her voice was soft. Her face, unreadable. I didn't come back expecting forgiveness, she added. But maybe we can work through it. For Mira. That's when I handed her the envelope. She opened it slowly. Her eyes scanned the first page. Legal jargon. Terms, dates, then the title. Notice of Separation and Custody Proposal. She looked up at me, blinking like she didn't understand. You're serving me papers? I'm giving you clarity, I said gently. You let our daughter collapse in front of strangers and said it was probably nerves. You defended the woman who endangered her. You left this house to live with her. I didn't. You left me to be the only one protecting Mira. I won't make the mistake of thinking you're on her side again. She swallowed. You're punishing me. I'm protecting her. And myself. She stood. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It did. And you really think she won't resent you for this later? I smiled, just a little. She won't. Because when she's older, she'll remember who stayed up all night beside her hospital bed. She'll remember who packed her pill case, who picked her recital dress, who believed her when everyone else told her she was too much. She'll remember. Rochelle didn't argue after that. She just picked up her purse and walked out. No more drama. No tears. Just the sound of a door closing. That night, I told Mira about the Arden grant. Her eyes lit up. Other girls like me? She whispered. Getting help. Exactly like you, I said. Some who want to play piano. Some who want to sing. Or paint. Or dance. She smiled, wider than I'd seen in weeks. And then, softly, she said, I want to perform again. You sure? She nodded. Not for competitions. Not for trophies. Just for kids. In hospitals. Like me. I felt something shift inside me. The ache turned to pride. And in that moment, I realized something simple and undeniable. This wasn't just about punishment. It was about purpose. And we had finally found ours. I hadn't visited my father's grave in almost a year. Not out of neglect. Just life. Myra's school. Work. The slow erosion of a marriage I was too tired to fix. But after everything that happened, after the lawsuit, the party, the trust, the silence, I knew it was time. Not for him. For me. Mira asked to come with me that morning. I was surprised at first. She never liked cemeteries. Said they felt too quiet, like everyone was holding their breath underground. But that morning, she put on a simple dress, tied her hair back, and said, I want to see where Grandpa is. I want to thank him. Thank him? I didn't ask. I just drove. The cemetery sat just outside the edge of town, behind a row of old oaks that bent slightly as if whispering to one another. It was mid-autumn. Leaves on the ground, dry and rustling beneath our shoes. Mira walked beside me, holding a small red candy in her palm. We reached the grave. It was clean. My brother stops by sometimes, and I appreciated that. I knelt and brushed off a few leaves from the headstone. Michael Harris, beloved father, steady soul. Mira stood quietly for a moment, then stepped forward, knelt beside the grave, and placed the candy gently on top. One last reminder, she said softly, of what we survived. I swallowed hard. My voice caught in my throat, but I managed to say, he would have been proud of you. She smiled without looking at me. He would have told me not to take sugar from anyone but the corner store. That made me laugh. It was the kind of laugh that came out low, warm, and sad all at once. I put my hand on her shoulder. You scared me, kid. That night on stage. I thought I was going to lose you. I know, she whispered. I was scared too. I couldn't feel my fingers. It was like my body knew something was wrong, but I didn't understand it. Silence settled between us again, but it wasn't heavy this time. It was peaceful. And then she asked the question I knew was coming eventually. Do I still have to see Mom? I didn't answer right away. The court documents were filed. The separation was official. Custody hadn't been finalized, but Rochelle hadn't fought me on anything. Not yet. Maybe because she knew she wouldn't win. Maybe because guilt had finally silenced her. Or maybe, just maybe, she was waiting for someone else to clean up her mess, like always. She hasn't asked to see you, I said gently. But if she does, that's her choice, Mira. Not mine. Her jaw tightened. I don't want to see her. Not yet. Okay. I don't hate her, she added quickly, eyes on the candy. But I don't trust her. That's more than fair. Do you? I sighed. I trust her to be who she is. That's enough. She nodded. We stood there a little longer. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out another candy, a red one, wrapped in clear cellophane. She handed it to me. I don't want to keep this, she said. Why not? Because every time I look at candy now, I remember what she did. That hit deeper than anything else. I held the candy in my hand. It was just sugar. But to Mira, it wasn't just a sweet. It was a symbol of betrayal, of fear, of a moment she realized not all family means safety. I kept it, not to eat, but as a reminder of the line we crossed and how we came back. That afternoon, after we returned home, I checked the mail. There was a thick envelope. Legal firm logo. Elaine's attorney. The name alone made me sigh. I opened it carefully. 7 pages. Typed. Cold. The language was classic Elaine, couched in professionalism but soaked in arrogance. Given the recent redistribution of the sea, how worth trust, it began. We find your actions damaging to the familial harmony and suggest immediate reconsideration, lest further escalation be pursued. Escalation. A threat. I didn't even finish reading it. I fed the entire packet into the shredder. I used to let letters like that fester. I'd reread them, lose sleep, question myself. Not anymore. They didn't get to pretend this was about harmony. That word belonged to people who knew what care looked like. They didn't get to wear the mask of respectability while holding a dagger behind their back. Later that evening, Mira came into my office. "Do you think they'll ever apologize?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. Maybe, but not the way you hope. Not with real words. Just gestures. Half steps. Would you accept that? No, I said. Because this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a choice. She nodded, like she already knew. That night, we ordered pizza. Watched an old animated movie she used to love when she was little. She fell asleep halfway through, curled up on the couch, arms wrapped around a pillow. I looked at her, sleeping there. Alive. Whole. Safe. And I realized something. You don't always win by yelling louder. You don't win by becoming crueler. You win by protecting peace when chaos begs you to join it. You win by remembering who you are, even when everyone around you forgets. Mira hadn't just survived. She'd grown. And so had I. We didn't look back. Not when Rochelle sent a text asking to talk sometime soon. Not when Elaine tried to reach out through a mutual friend with a vague, performative apology. Not when distant relatives began tiptoeing back into our lives with confused smiles and cautious small talk. Because the truth is, there are some doors you close gently and some you seal shut for good. After everything we'd been through, Mira and I needed the latter. The weeks that followed moved slower than usual, but in the kind of way you appreciate. No more daily phone calls from angry in-laws. No more manipulation cloaked as advice. Just quiet mornings, honest conversations, and music drifting through the house again like sunlight. She started playing piano more. Not for practice. For healing. I'd pass her room and see her sitting at the keyboard in her socks, eyes closed, fingers dancing across the keys like they'd never stopped. Sometimes she played soft and sweet. Other times fast and urgent, like her feelings had outgrown her voice and could only be spoken through sound. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. One night, after dinner, she asked if we could visit the children's hospital. Just to look. Just to see how the piano sounds there, she said. We called ahead, and the staff was more than welcoming. They knew Myra's story. Word had spread after the Arden grant was announced. A few even pulled me aside in the hallway to say they admired what we did. But I hadn't done anything heroic. I'd just done what every parent should. Protect. Tell the truth. And when necessary, burn a bridge if it meant saving your child's future. The hospital's small performance room had an upright Yamaha and a low stage that barely fit more than 3 chairs. Nothing grand. No chandeliers. No velvet curtains. But to Mira, it was everything. She sat down at the piano like she was meeting an old friend. I watched from the back as the nurses brought in a few kids, some wheeled in, some walking carefully, for poles trailing behind them like tired guardians. Mira introduced herself. Spoke clearly, warmly. My name's Mira. And I used to be scared of playing again. But then I realized, music isn't just for when you're feeling perfect. It's for when you're healing. Then she began to play. She chose something gentle. A lullaby she wrote herself. Notes that fluttered like feathers but settled deep. The room went still. Parents wept quietly. A little boy closed his eyes and smiled. One girl clapped along offbeat, but with joy I couldn't put into words. When she finished, the silence turned into applause. Soft. Honest. Real. She bowed, blushing, and looked over at me. I clapped the hardest. The next day, the hospital shared a photo of her on social media. Just her hands on the keys, with the caption, "Sometimes the best medicine comes from a child who chooses to share her strength." The photo went viral. Donations to the Arden grant began flooding in. Messages from other parents poured into my inbox. Some had daughters just like Mira. Some had children who couldn't play piano, but needed help chasing their own dreams, art, dance, storytelling. anything that gave them life beyond their limitations. We expanded the program, added a mentorship arm. Mira helped design the first welcome letter. Hi, it read. I'm Mira. You don't know me yet, but I believe in you already. I read it and cried like a child. She didn't just reclaim her voice. She gave it to others. A local reporter reached out and asked if we'd be open to sharing our story. I hesitated at first, but Mira said yes before I could answer. So we did the interview together. On camera, her hands in mine. She spoke about what it felt like to collapse on that stage. What it meant to know someone who was supposed to love her had intentionally tried to tear her down. She didn't say her aunt's name, didn't throw mud. She just said, I used to think being really good at something made people hate you. Now I know it just shows you who they really are. The story aired in 5 cities. The Arden grant doubled in size. Rochelle texted again a week later. Please tell Mira I'm proud of her. I didn't reply. She didn't get to rewrite her ending just because the audience clapped. Mira didn't ask about her mother much after that. And I didn't push. When she was ready, she would speak. And if she never did, that was her right. Because forgiveness is not a performance. It's a choice. And some days, choosing peace means choosing distance. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun dip behind the houses, she turned to me and said, Do you think people can really change? I thought about it. I think some can, I said. But not because they're sorry. Because they finally see how badly they hurt others. That kind of change takes time. And honesty. She nodded, then smiled faintly. Good. Because I want to be someone who gives people chances. But not more than they deserve. I laughed quietly. You've got a better head on your shoulders than most adults I know. She leaned against me. We sat like that until the stars came out. I thought about the word legacy. How people throw it around like it means power or money. But sitting there, with Mira breathing beside me and the air full of quiet music from her soul, I knew what it really meant. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you build while you're still here. And we were just getting started.